Have you ever wondered what lies in the dark, hidden depths of a cave? What would you do if an adventure turned into a fight for survival? In today's video, we are diving deep into the chilling story of two explorers, Mitch Gubkin and Kurt Harler, who entered the mysterious Coffe Cave in West Virginia. Armed with their gear and excitement for exploration, they descended into one of the most dangerous caves in the region. But soon, things took a terrifying turn. As the icy water roared and time ticked away, they faced challenges they never expected. Will they make it out? Let's unravel this intense and gripping story of survival, determination, and the unknown. Welcome to the underground wonders of West Virginia. If you're looking for a thrilling new adventure, you're in the right place. West Virginia is a state full of natural beauty, and one of its hidden treasures lies beneath the surface. The caves of West Virginia are some of the most incredible places you can explore. Whether you're an experienced cave enthusiast or just curious to learn more about these mysterious underground worlds, you're about to discover a whole new side of nature. West Virginia is known for its stunning mountains and rolling hills, but many people don't realize what lies beneath them. Throughout the state, especially in the eastern and southeastern parts, you'll find natural caves formed by the slow dissolving of rocks like limestone and dolomite. Over many thousands of years, groundwater carved out these intricate and fascinating systems, leaving behind a landscape that's both beautiful and mysterious. With cool temperatures of around 52 degrees year-round and high humidity, West Virginia caves provide a unique and otherworldly environment that feels like stepping into a different realm. These caves are more than just beautiful to look at. They hold important stories about the state's geology, biology, and even its history. Scientists have studied these caves to learn more about the Earth's past, but they're also a playground for adventure seekers. Many caves in West Virginia are open to the public for exploration, giving you a chance to experience firsthand what it's like to be deep underground. From seeing unique rock formations to learning about the creatures that call these caves home, the experience is both educational and exciting. Today, we are diving into one of West Virginia's most fascinating caves, Coffe Cave, located on Cheat Mountain in the town of Coffe. Although it's not open to the public, this cave is a remarkable place full of natural wonders. One of its most impressive features is the so-called Big Room, a massive chamber that's 800 feet long, 180 feet high, and 75 feet wide. This incredible space is like a hidden world underground, where you can see just how powerful nature is over time. Coffe Cave is also home to the tallest underground waterfall in both West Virginia and Virginia, known as Lacey Suicide Falls. The waterfall drops an astonishing 139 feet, making it a breathtaking sight. However, the name of the falls is misleading. While a tragic event did happen in the cave, it occurred near a smaller drop close to the entrance, not at the waterfall itself. Though the cave remains off-limits to most people today, it once captured the attention of adventurers and photographers alike. In June of 1964, National Geographic featured a stunning photograph of a caver climbing a wire ladder right next to the waterfall. The image, taken by Huntley Ingalls, was lit by flashbulbs and showed the raw beauty and challenge of exploring Coffe Cave's hidden depths. Now, even though we can't visit this cave ourselves, its history and natural features make it an exciting topic to explore. From its giant chambers to its stunning waterfall, Coffe Cave is a true wonder of West Virginia, offering a glimpse into the incredible underground landscapes hidden beneath the state's mountains. In 1984, at around 1 p.m. on Saturday, December 1st, Mitch Gubkin, a 20-year-old with a growing passion for cave exploration, and his friend, Kurt Harler, decided to take on the challenge of exploring Coffe Cave in Pocahontas County, West Virginia. Both were eager cavers with a strong thirst for adventure and discovery. Now for Mitch, this wasn't his first time entering Coffe Cave. He had been inside once before, which gave him a sense of familiarity. but neither of them had full knowledge of the cave's hidden pathways, making this journey both exciting and dangerous. Cass Cave is no ordinary cave. The entrance leads to a long passage about 700 feet in length. This passage takes you to a daunting 130-foot vertical drop that opens up into the massive big room, one of the cave's most famous features. To make things more intense, a surface stream flows into the cave, running along the passage and pouring over the steep drop into the big room. The stream was cold, about 30 degrees Fahrenheit, and though it wasn't very wide, about 3 feet across and 6 inches deep, it added an extra challenge to their exploration. The water, combined with strong winds caused by the cascading waterfall, created extremely cold conditions. Hypothermia was a real risk. Mitch and Kurt, however, were not unprepared. They knew the dangers of caving, especially in a cave like Cass, where the environment can be unforgiving. To protect themselves from the cold, they layered up. Underneath, they wore long underwear to keep warm, and over that, they had wool clothing, known for retaining heat even when wet. And on top of everything, they wore Gore-Tex suits, which are waterproof and windproof to shield themselves from the chilling water and harsh winds inside the cave. Their preparation didn't stop there. Mitch had packed 2 cave packs full of supplies to make sure that they were well equipped. Inside one of his packs, he had a spare carbide lamp, essential for providing light in the dark depths of the cave. In the other pack, he carried a space blanket, which could help in case they needed extra warmth or found themselves in a survival situation. Despite their preparation, neither of them knew about an alternative route in the cave called the belay loft. If they had climbed to a higher level and continued a bit further, they would have found a much safer entrance to the big room. This route leads to a 180-foot dry drop, which would have avoided the cold, rushing stream. But, unaware of this option, Mitch and Kurt pressed forward, eager to explore the cave in their own way. Their passion for caving pushed them to keep going, despite the cold and difficult conditions. For them, cave exploration was more than just a hobby. It was a chance to test their limits and experience the hidden beauty of the underground world. The thrill of venturing into the unknown and discovering new parts of the cave kept them motivated, even as the challenges mounted. With their gear and excitement, Mitch and Kurt were determined to make their mark on Cass Cave. They knew that caving required skill, bravery, and preparation, and they had all 3 in abundance. As they went deeper into the cave, they were driven by the excitement of what they might find, knowing that each step brought them closer to the heart of one of West Virginia's most remarkable caves. Mitch and Kurt were determined to push forward. They rigged their nearly new 300-foot rope to avoid the main flow of water. It seemed like that they would only be hit by the spray from the waterfall, not the full force of it. Confident in their setup, Mitch began his descent. He lowered himself about 50 feet down the drop, stopping at a small ledge where he could rest. Kurt followed him down without any issues, joining him on the ledge. However, once they reached the ledge and felt the full power of the icy spray hitting them, they started to reconsider their plan. The cold was intense, and the risk of hypothermia was becoming very real. After a quick discussion, they decided to retreat and end the expedition early. Kurt started to ascend the rope first. Though he was soaked by the freezing spray, he managed to climb back up without much difficulty. When it was Mitch's turn to ascend, things took a troubling turn. For reasons that aren't entirely clear, Mitch ran into trouble on the rope. He called up to Kurt, asking for help. Kurt, hearing the distress in Mitch's voice, descended partway back down to establish contact. They talked to each other briefly, and it became clear that Mitch was in real trouble. Kurt realized that this was more than he could handle alone, and outside help was desperately needed. So at around 6 p.m., Kurt climbed out of the cave and raced to a nearby residence to call for help. The situation quickly escalated, with the sheriff's office, state police, local rescue squads, fire departments, and the National Cave Rescue Commission, or NCRC, being alerted. Word spread fast, and soon a rescue operation was underway. Meanwhile, Mitch was still in the cave, trapped on the rope, enduring the freezing conditions of the waterfall. Coincidentally, 4 experienced cavers from Pittsburgh were camped nearby. They heard about the emergency and immediately set out to help. When they reached the cave's entrance and arrived at the 130-foot drop, they were shocked by what they found. Another group of 3 cavers was just about to descend, completely unaware that Mitch was in serious danger only 60 feet below them. The Pittsburgh cavers quickly informed the group and took charge of the situation. They decided to use the safer route, the belay loft, which would allow them to descend into the big room without having to pass through the dangerous waterfall. This entrance, a 180-foot dry drop, provided a better option for rescuing Mitch. One of the cavers descended from the belay loft and stopped level with Mitch, now only 60 feet away from him. What they saw was devastating. Mitch was still on the rope, hanging in midair. His body was in a partially inverted position, about 6 feet below the ledge that he had stopped on earlier. The full force of the freezing waterfall was now crashing down on him. His body appeared limp and lifeless, and despite the rescuer's shouts, there was no response. The frigid water had been pounding him for hours, and it was clear that he was in critical condition. This information was quickly relayed to the surface team via walkie-talkie. By 8:30 p.m., more rescuers began arriving on the scene, but the conditions inside the cave were brutal. The freezing water and strong winds made it nearly impossible to work effectively. At first, the only extra protective gear available was a wetsuit top, which one of the rescuers put on before attempting to reach Mitch. After examining the situation closely, the worst was confirmed. Mitch had died from the exposure and the force of the waterfall. The focus of the mission then shifted from a rescue to a recovery. However, retrieving Mitch's body was no easy task. Several attempts were made to haul him up the drop using various methods, including a block and tackle system, but each attempt failed. The powerful water and the complex positioning of Mitch's body made the situation incredibly difficult. Finally, after many hours of effort, the rescuers decided to lower Mitch's body to the bottom of the 130-foot drop. From there, they hauled him up to the belay loft, where his body was safely evacuated from the cave. The recovery operation, which had started the previous evening, was only completed at around 4 p.m. on Sunday. The tragic events surrounding Mitch Gubkin's death in Cass Cave leave us with important lessons about the dangers of cave exploration and the thin line between success and catastrophe. When rescuers finally reached Mitch, they found that his Mitchell rig, a standard ascending system used by cavers, was in good working order. This suggests that the equipment itself wasn't at fault, but rather the circumstances combined with human error and the harsh environment. Inside one of his packs, the space blanket that he carried appeared to have been hastily stuffed back in, indicating that he had likely tried to use it but was overwhelmed by the situation. It's possible that Mitch initially tried to ascend, but struggled with getting over the first ledge. This difficulty was likely made worse by the early onset of hypothermia, which would have impaired both his physical strength and his mental clarity. Hypothermia is a dangerous condition that sets in when the body loses heat faster than it can produce it. In Mitch's case, the freezing water and cold winds inside the cave created an environment where his body temperature would have dropped rapidly. Despite their preparations, including wearing layers of wool and waterproof Gore-Tex suits, the cold proved too much. Mitch's early symptoms of hypothermia might have included confusion, loss of coordination, and fatigue, which may explain why he decided to retreat to the ledge and wait for help. However, after Harler left to get help, Mitch's situation became even more precarious. Alone and battling the cold, he may have grown impatient or disoriented, leading him to make a second attempt to ascend the rope. In the throes of hypothermia, rational thinking can become clouded, and it's possible that Mitch's desperation to escape the icy water led him to make poor decisions. Whether he lost his patience or simply couldn't tolerate the cold any longer, he tried to ascend again, but failed. When the rescuers found him, his body was hanging below the ledge, and his rope was coiled on the ledge above him. This suggests that he may have rigged the rope with too much slack, causing him to fall off the ledge when he couldn't complete the ascent. Another possibility is that he made a second attempt to climb, and, weakened by hypothermia, collapsed and slipped back into the waterfall's deadly grasp. This tragic accident highlights several key mistakes that future cavers can learn from to prevent similar incidents. First, the importance of understanding the cave's layout cannot be overstated. If Mitch and Kurt had known about the belay loft and the safer dry drop, they could have avoided the dangerous route through the waterfall entirely. Proper research and knowledge of alternative routes could have given them a much safer option. Secondly, while Mitch and Kurt were well prepared with the right clothing and equipment, they underestimated the severity of the cold environment. Caves, especially those with flowing water, can become life-threatening due to hypothermia in a short amount of time. Cavers must recognize the signs of hypothermia early and make conservative decisions to retreat before reaching a critical point of exhaustion or confusion. Thirdly, communication and coordination between caving partners is vital. In this case, Harler did the right thing by going for help when it became clear that Mitch was in trouble. However, had they both known more about their situation, they might have been able to exit the cave together or find a better way to keep Mitch warm while waiting for rescue. And finally, one of the most important lessons is patience and the need to stay calm under pressure. Mitch's possible decision to quote-unquote go for it after waiting for rescue likely sealed his fate. In dangerous situations like this, staying put and conserving energy can be a far more effective strategy. Panic, combined with the effects of hypothermia, can cause even experienced cavers to make deadly mistakes. In conclusion, the loss of Mitch Gubkin was a tragic outcome that serves as a sobering reminder of the risks involved in caving. The combination of difficult terrain, freezing temperatures, and human error led to a situation that spiraled out of control. By better understanding cave environments, preparing thoroughly, maintaining clear communication, and recognizing when to retreat or stay put, future cavers can reduce the risk of such accidents. Mitch's story is one that should be remembered by the caving community, not just as a tale of loss, but as a lesson in the importance of safety, knowledge, and respect for the underground world.
Mammoth Cave is the longest cave system in the world. The cave system spreads out across 52,830 acres at Mammoth Cave National Park in Kentucky, while making it almost double the length of the second longest cave system. Explorers have unearthed human remains at the site. Some were part of ritual burials, and others died while exploring the cave's vast tunnels. The allure of Mammoth Cave brought explorers from far and wide to search for new entrances, and one intrepid explorer found a separate cave that became the site of a rescue operation that captivated the entire country. The most recent rescue operation in the Mammoth Cave area even happened earlier this year in 2022. Grab your lights and get ready to explore Mammoth Cave and the small cave nearby, which was home to one of the most tragic caving accidents in history. History and geography. Mammoth Cave is made from layers of limestone, otherwise known as strata, with a layer of sandstone on top. Both of these materials work together over millions of years to develop the cave's intricate tunnels, and they combine to make the cave stronger and more resistant to tectonic shifts. The layer where the limestone and sandstone meet create small passages in the cave's epicarstic zone. These small tunnels provide runoff to the lower limestone layer, which pools to form the Mammoth Cave's intricate tunnel system. The above-ground rivers lead to the southern region of the cave to create an enormous sinkhole known as the Cedar Sink, which extends 300 feet into the earth. The bottom of the Cedar Sink has a massive drainage area, which spreads out over 7 acres. The longest passage of Mammoth Cave stretches out to an astonishing 420 miles. Researchers and spelunkers have found mummified remains at Mammoth Cave dating back to the pre-Columbian era or prior to 1492. Another set of remains was found in 1935, crushed under a huge rock. Archaeologists called the Native American victim Lost John, and they believe he was a miner who accidentally broke a boulder above him, leading to a landslide. This body was later given a proper burial deeper within the cave, but it wouldn't be the only time a boulder would cause a tragedy in the vast Kentucky cave system. Mammoth Cave holds a special place in the history of archaeology as well. Researchers found artifacts that were used by ancient explorers who visited the cave. With these tools, researchers tested a technique called experimental archaeology, where teams would explore the cave without modern harnesses, lights, and other caving equipment. Instead, they tried exploring using recreations of the ancient technology they found in Mammoth Cave. This technique tested the equipment and technological level of ancient societies, and it gave researchers first-hand knowledge of the physical challenges the original cavers had to face. Mammoth Cave is also home to a vast underground river with rock formations that mirror Gothic architecture, like the Wells Cathedral and the Sainte Chapelle. During rainstorms, the interior of the cave can be shrouded in a layer of dense fog to create an unmistakably eerie atmosphere. The earliest written history of the cave dates back to the Pollard Survey in 1791, just 15 years after the American Declaration of Independence was signed. But stories say that the first non-Native American to enter the cave was Francis Houchin or John Houchin, who were hunting a bear that fled into the Mammoth Cave at its entrance by Green River. Shortly after it was first surveyed, Valentine Simons began mining the cave for saltpeter, one of the major ingredients in old gunpowder. For the next 50 years, the cave was bought and sold until Stephen Bishop began exploring the cave. Stephen was one of the first African-American cavers. At the time, he was forced to work in the cave since emancipation hadn't taken place yet. In spite of his tragic work conditions, Stephen became one of the first people to map out Mammoth Cave as he braved depths that no one had ever ventured to before. He served as a guide for tourists, and he christened the majority of the cave's famous features, and many of these names still stand to this day. Floyd Collins and the Mammoth Frenzy. In the early 1900s, Mammoth Cave was at the heart of the Kentucky Cave Wars, where local companies fought to attract tourists to the various caves in the area. Landowners and cave tour guides would sabotage competitors with fake signs to drive people away from Mammoth Cave, since it was the biggest attraction in the area. Eventually, the cave became accessible by steamboat, and numerous explorers tried to map out the cave over the next few years until 1925, when Floyd Collins traveled to Mammoth Cave, turning it from a local tourist hotspot to a national news headliner. Floyd Collins was an American caver born on July 20, 1887. He started exploring caves when he was just 6 years old, and he was already well on his way to becoming an entrepreneur. Even at this early age, Floyd was searching for Native American artifacts to sell to tourists who were visiting Mammoth Cave. At 13, Collins discovered his first cave on his family's farm. He named it Donkey's Cave, and he continued to find more caves like the Dosey's Dome Cave. In 1917, Collins excavated a rock breakdown to discover a sinkhole leading to a new cave. He dubbed it the Great Crystal Cave, or the Great Onyx Cave, which is a part of the Flint River cave system, and it would end up connecting to Mammoth Cave. Since the cave was on his land, his family did their best to turn it into a tourist attraction. The cave was breathtaking, but it was too impractical to be a tourist destination, so Collins searched for another cave that he could show off to get a slice of the revenue from the ongoing Kentucky Cave Wars. Because of Mammoth Cave's huge attraction, Collins wanted to find another entrance to the cave to capitalize on the namesake and win over more customers. A few weeks later, and Collins found a small hole. He dug around it, and found that this hole was a cave entrance. He called it Sand Cave and began advertising the cave. Collins spent over 12 hours every day working to excavate a larger pathway to Sand Cave and create his new tourist destination. A new entrance or a coffin? On January 30th, 1925, Collins was crawling through tight, narrow tunnels when he found a grotto chamber. Excited by his discovery, Floyd took extra time exploring the place, and he lost track of how low he was on lamplight. He quickly left the grotto and tried to speed through the tight passages to the surface. In his frantic rush, he jerked, knocking over his lamp. As the flames died out, leaving him in a casket of darkness, Floyd's sudden motion sent up a vibration on the side of the passageway, knocking a 27-pound boulder that pinned his leg to the floor of the cave. As a veteran caver, Floyd could easily lift the boulder in normal circumstances, but he was stuck in a cramped crawl space, and he didn't have the proper leverage to move the stone. He was trapped 150 feet from the exit of Sand Cave. When Collins didn't arrive home, his business associates went searching for him. They quickly found that he was stuck in the unexcavated cave, and they sent him crackers for some nourishment as they formulated a plan. The team quickly assembled fellow cavers, engineers, and geologists across the state to rescue Collins. They sent him an electric light so he could see, and the bulb helped provide some much-needed warmth in the damp crevice. The team worked around the clock for weeks. On February 4th, the passage Collins initially entered collapsed in 2 different places. The rescue ops determined the entrance unsafe, so the team brought in miners to dig a shaft to extract Collins from the cave. Meanwhile, the story spread like wildfire in the cave-crazed region of Kentucky. Small carts and wagons opened up vending shops near the rescue base, selling beverages, food, and even souvenirs to thousands of spectators hungry for the drama of the trapped caver. Reports quickly spread to national news outlets thanks to the efforts of William Burke Miller, a famous newspaper and radio reporter. Miller was small enough to fit in the partially collapsed entrance to Sand Cave, so he went as far as he could into the most dangerous part of the cave to interview Floyd. He would later win the Pulitzer Prize for his journalistic efforts. Back at Sand Cave, the hordes of sightseers got so massive that Kentucky officials dispatched their state troops to keep the peace. The mining crew dug a 55-foot shaft followed by a horizontal tunnel to the side of Collins. It took the crew 17 days to reach him, but they were too late. On February 16th, Ed Brenner, one of the miners, reached Collins to find him cold and dead. The crew tried to send a doctor down, but he was unable to reach Collins. They brought Floyd's friend Johnny Geralds into the tunnel to identify, and he was pronounced dead. The access tunnel was positioned too far to the side of Collins, so the team couldn't remove the rock, and Collins was buried in Sand Cave. Months later, he was exhumed and buried at the Mammoth Cave Baptist Church Cemetery. To make the tragedy even worse, Collins' dream was impossible, even if he had made it out. Sand Cave wasn't connected to Mammoth Cave. He died searching for an entrance that wasn't there. The huge publicity of the tragedy caused local officials to band together to create the Mammoth Cave National Park, which still exists today. The 2022 Scare. On February 20th, 2022, Mammoth Cave itself made headlines when reports rang out about a woman trapped in the sprawling abyss. Original reports hinted that a novice tourist suffered a fall, but in truth, the woman was a 60-year-old experienced spelunker. She was working on an expedition with the CRF, the Cave Research Foundation, to explore unmapped portions of the world's longest cave. The Cave Research Foundation started because of the Kentucky Cave Wars and the frenzy over Mammoth Cave. They studied the Floyd Collins Crystal Cave and branched out to other caves in the area. Now they're part of the National Speleological Society, and they sponsor expeditions to help protect and conserve caves and to advance more research into caves. The CRF was still finding new entrances to the Mammoth Cave as recently as 2005. The CRF researcher was 2.5 miles into the vast underground labyrinth of Mammoth Cave when she fell and injured her shoulder. It took emergency medical services and park officials 2.5 hours to traverse the path to her. Luckily, the cave area was still intact, unlike what happened to Collins. Because she was an adept caver, she was actually able to aid in her own rescue. With the help of the team at Mammoth Cave National Park, she was able to walk out of the cave, and she was treated at a local hospital with non-life-threatening injuries. You don't have to be a top-level spelunker to explore Mammoth Cave. The National Park in Kentucky provides tours to Mammoth Cave, which is now a UNESCO World Heritage Site. Some of the tours can last up to 6 hours, and others divert from the well-traveled areas into muddy passages that more closely resembled an untamed cave. That's the dark history of how one man risked everything to find a new entrance to Mammoth Cave on his journey for riches and glory that ended up being his doom. Have you ever been to Mammoth Cave? What cave stories should we cover next? Let us know in the comments section. While you're there, rappel down and hit that like and subscribe button so you don't miss out on our next heart-pounding video.